put together an outstanding class. And I think this will allow us to continue to build momentum and continue to generate some energy for our program. Last season was a very successful season, on the field and in the classroom. I think that really allowed us to move forward into recruiting and to really generate a lot of momentum and get in on some kids that have allowed us to put together an outstanding class. We came into the recruiting process this year basically with three legitimate themes. We wanted to improve our overall team speed. Really thought that is something we needed to do, and I thought we addressed that very well with a number of skilled athletes in this recruiting class. We wanted to get taller and longer, and I think as you look up and down the roster there of our signees, NLIs, got a number of tall, rangy players at just about every position. So I think we're going to continue to look a little different as we continue to get taller, longer, and as aforementioned, faster. Then lastly, we really wanted to focus in on some guys that had the ability to play multiple positions. I really feel 11 of these 13 guys have the ability to play more than just one position on our football team. Laletta at quarterback is a quarterback, and then Klebert at tackle at 6'8", 320 is an offensive tackle. I really think everybody else has some multiple position value, and I think there's a lot of value in that when you're putting your class together. We got great balance, 7 on offense, 6 on defense, 6 skilled athletes, then 6 what I call mid body types, tight ends, running backs, linebackers, defensive ends. And geographically, I think we got a really good representation. We always want to do well locally. Brian Brown was a huge get for us here from Hermitage High School. Got 3 Virginia players, 3 Pennsylvania players, 3 players from North Carolina, and an opportunity to really spread the net to complete the class to get to our 13th commitment. Very unusual this year, our early success. We identified the prospects early, got them on campus early. 11 of the 13 players had been on our campus before the start of the season, and I think that really led to our ability to have a lot of early success. I think this class allows us to continue to build our program. When you add in the 3 mid-year players that we brought in here in January, you're looking at 16 student athletes that I think can really bolster our roster here in 2013. At this time, I'll open it up for any questions here from the media.
Why was length such a big deal? You don't hear that much from a football coach.
Yeah, well, I thought that from the beginning there were some positions when I first got here that I felt real good about in terms of our length, but some other positions I did not feel nearly as good about. I think when you watch and study football at the highest level, it's pretty prominent to have tall, long bodies. They're a little more disruptive, take up a little more space. We've had tackles and tight ends here that are tall and long. I wanted to continue to do that. We got a 6'6" tight end, a 6'5" tight end, a 6'8" offensive tackle. All linebackers, I wanted to get some more length in there. Waller's 6'3", Kieran Gregory's 6'3", Winston Craig is 6'3", so these DN linebacker positions can get taller and longer than anybody that plays the ball in the air. There's value in being tall and long, so whether you're the wide receivers, we have Stephen Barnett, got Reggie on defense. Those guys are tall and long. They can get to some balls, Reggie Diggs was a kid we brought in last year, tall and long. Brian Brown, 6'2". He obviously can do that. We got a couple safeties that are tall and long in this class. So I think it's significant, and I think it's a good way for us to continue to move forward.
Coach, last year at this time, you were, I won't say kind of behind the eight ball because you had been here maybe a little over a month at that time. How important was it to have a full year under your belt of recruiting to get these guys to come to Richmond?
Yeah, I think it was very significant. It gave me personally a lot better depth of understanding of what our needs were and then what we were going after. A year ago, I didn't have the depth of understanding as to what our needs were. I could look at a depth chart. I would listen to the guys that we retained on staff and placed great value in their judgment. But personally, I didn't quite have the depth of knowledge there. And then ultimately, this university sells itself extremely well. And when we're able to get kids in here early with their families, we got a great opportunity to get them to say yes. So it just backed the whole calendar up about 6 or 8 months for me. We had players in for our junior day a year ago. And on that particular group, several of them were in this signing group. We had players on campus for our one-day camps in June. Several of those players signed with us. So we had a lot more early traction with this group. I've been doing this 28, 29 years. And this group right here was united early and remained together for the duration. And they all signed today by 9:08. So I was really, really pleased and happy kind of with the unity which these kids have been able to develop because they've been to get committed and together for such a long time.
Coach, how many walk-ons would you like to bring in? And the second part of that is what sort of roster size would you like to settle on?
Well, it's a good question. I am very highly motivated to get to 90 or 90 plus. I feel comfortable that that number works here, in terms of Title IX and support with our administration. I think that in recent years, the University of Richmond has been stuck in the lower 80s. And as we speak right now, I feel pretty confident that we'll be reporting to camp with 90 student athletes and maybe a couple of more. I think right now we have some real momentum going, and our president has been very supportive. Our administration, Keith Gill, our athletic director. I think we've got things moving in a very positive direction, evidenced, I think, by some of these early commitments and the interest level right now in our football program. So I'd like to think that we're going to continue to build and bolster that roster.
Can you speak more on Brian Brown from Hermitage, please?
Yeah, it's kind of, I said this a little earlier today. I'm kind of pinching myself today because, this is the craziest thing about the signing date and the recruiting process is I'm not allowed to talk about the kids until today. So I've been asked in numerous settings, tell me about Brian. I can't talk about him, and it just seems like such an odd thing to say. But he's a dynamic athlete. He is tall, long, rangy. He fits all that criteria, 6'2", 185 pounds, somewhere in there. And he's explosive. And he most certainly could play on either side of the football. He's a dynamic player on defense. We're going to play him on offense. I like his ability to, make big plays. He plays the ball in the air very well, and I think he could be dynamic for us there. So we're really excited about it. He comes from a great program. Coach Kane does a great job there. Interestingly enough, as you go through these guys' bios, it's amazing how many of these kids won conference championships, district championships, won 10 games this season, or even state championships. So there's a lot of winning that's assembled here in this particular class of 13.
Coach, is there a position on your roster based on these signees that you hit all your needs as far as size, length?
Yeah, Yeah, I think I'll work backwards to answer that question. The one thing that we were kind of hedging our bets on a little bit this year was that we were not highly motivated to take many or any offensive linemen. We brought 3 good ones in last year. We got another defensive lineman that's a freshman that could play O-line. So we said all year long, if we bring in an offensive lineman, he has to be a tackle and he's got to be big. All right, so we ended up here at the tail end here getting a young man out of Archbishop Rummel in New Orleans, Patrick Klebert, 6'8", 320. So we answered that right there. He'll redshirt. We won't need to play him immediately. Beyond that, I do think that we met an awful lot of our needs. We wanted to have more depth, speed, length in the skilled positions, and I feel real good about that. The only guy that doesn't measure up height-wise is Tafon Mansay out of Charlotte. He's dynamic. He's a Wayne Pettis type of player. He can return kicks. He's a corner. He can do so many different things for you. So, holistically, I feel real good. I think a lot of times, the player's readiness to play depends a lot on what he's able to do from this point forward. Then ultimately, it comes down to what our needs are. We definitely felt we needed to get a running back, and we got one, and we're really excited about this young man and what he can do. And I'm very, very hopeful. Jeremiah Hamlin, 6', 222. He's kind of a cross between Kendall Gaskins and more of a scat back type, but he's a big body that can run. So I feel good about addressing our needs. We wanted to bring in a freshman quarterback. We got one in Laletta. He was our top pick from the very beginning. If this was the NFL draft, we would have used our first pick on Kyle Laletta. That's how good we feel about him. And then Porter Abel is another dynamic athlete that can play quarterback, slot receiver. Reminds me a lot of Ben Edwards. Reminds us a lot of Ben Edwards. So we think we addressed a lot of our needs here. And really, in theory, only time will tell. Sir?
You've kind of brought in quarterbacks the last few years, or the program has. How important is it to groom Kyle to be a homegrown quarterback as opposed to a transfer quarterback?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great question. I had, lengthy conversation with Kyle just before the Christmas holiday. And that was kind of what I was communicating to him. We brought David Broadus in last year. I really like David. David's got a bright future. He's a big, strong-armed kid. David committed to me my first day on the job here a year ago. All right, so this is really the first time that I have been able to say, okay, let's put the names out there. Let's evaluate this pool. Let's decide who we want, what direction we want to go. So having said that, I think your question is extremely appropriate. I think, this is the guy that we feel from the beginning, meets our needs, allows us to run the style of offense we want to run, dynamic enough, versatile enough, yet he's a quarterback. He can throw the football. Great leadership qualities, all the intangibles. I think the interesting thing with how that played out with Kyle came down to our first camp, and he had a brace on his leg, and he probably didn't have his best camp that particular day, though he did a lot of good things. And as we were trying to hone in and make this decision on which quarterback we were going to offer, I had conversation with him a little later in the summer, and I said, Kyle, I want you to come back down. I really want to get another look at you. He said, when do you want me? And I said, how about this date? He said, I'll be there. So just from that moment on, I really knew he was the guy. I mean, he wanted to compete, and he did a phenomenal job up there at Downingtown East High School. They think the world of him up there, and so we're excited about his decision. Great fit for our university.
Coach, it's the first first time some of us had a chance to ask you about, when you speak of quarterbacks, about Michael coming in here. An exciting time for you, I guess, to be able to coach your nephew.
Yeah, it is. I look at it more from the perspective of, bringing a talented player into our program. It's got 21 starts, at a ACC university up at UVA. I watch very closely here since we've been off the road, and Michael Strauss is working hard, competing, getting bigger, stronger. Mike Rocco's competing. Montel White's competing. I think that we've created a really good situation in terms of having options, depth, and talent. As everyone knows, Rocco has a waiver that will need to be filed that has yet to been completed. We'll probably move towards the completion of that sometime later this week or early next week, and then we'll just wait to see the response from the NCAA.
Coach, what is the university's argument on behalf of Michael and his eligibility this year?
Well, I think, John, the most specific thing is in understanding the rule and the rationale of when the rule was implemented. This is a young man who is on track to graduate in 4 years. Very seldom does the NCAA initiate any ruling that would prohibit a student athlete or prolong his college experience. All right, so Michael is in a real unique situation because very seldom does a player play his first 3 years and then transfer. Usually the transfer student athlete was redshirted his first year. All right, so in theory, the fact that the young man was never redshirted, he's being penalized. And the young man has no say as to whether or not he's redshirted or not. That decision is always made by the coach. All right, so it's really focused more on the reality that once Michael Rocco played his freshman year, they made a conscious decision to get him graduated in 4 years. So whether it's Mike, his family, or the staff at UVA. So he has been on track to graduate, and he can transfer in here and graduate in 4 years. Kind of defies logic that there would be reason to knock him off track. So I think that's the impetus of the initial waiver. There's always other factors. Those are varying degrees of significance. But I think that is the impetus of moving forward with his waiver.
Is one of the other factors your relationship with him?
I think that's mentioned. Like I said, there's been nothing formally done yet, so I don't even know if that's going to get mentioned. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's probably going to be in there somewhere along the way as a factor, maybe more so in him choosing this school versus just the reality that he should be eligible to play regardless of what FCS school he may have transferred to. But I could see that factoring in as one of the points being made, but certainly not the focal point.
Coach, with your knowledge of this rule, do you get the sense that the waiver will go through and he will be eligible?
I think I really have a hard time with any certainty, being able to really offer that. I think that when we sit down and go through the depth of the presentation, I'll have a better feeling myself as to what this feels like and what this all sounds like. But in my experiences, and again, I've dealt with numerous transfer situations. I think the basic logic here says that this particular student athlete deserves the opportunity to stay on track and to graduate in 4 years. All right, so I think there is a lot of strength to that argument right there. Time will tell in terms of the interp.
Hey, is it fair to say, Coach, that you'd prefer Michael to play this year and he would too?
Yeah, I think so. I think I said this to you earlier. I think that by his being granted his eligibility, it allows any decision beyond that to be ours. opposed to somebody else's. So in any situation, you want to have as much control over the decisions as you possibly can. So for him to be granted his waiver, then we then have the control over how we move forward.
Coach, can you comment on your extension?
Well, I'm really excited about it, humbled by it. I mentioned it the other day. I think it really resonates in a number of different areas. I think first and foremost, it shows the real support here of President Ayers and his administration. Keith Gill, our athletic director, coming in here relatively anew and showing that statement of support. That's all very significant. It's significant to me personally, my family. It's significant to our staff, knowing that, okay, that support's in place. They recognize the achievement, the accomplishment, and they rewarded us with such a statement of support. I think our current players are excited about it because there's been so much instability here. All of a sudden, when we finish the season, highs and lows, emotions everywhere. But at the end of the day, there's a statement of support there. So I think that resonates with our student athletes. Then ultimately, and maybe even of most significance, is the young men that signed with us today. They see this come out here on Monday, I believe, and they've made their decision. It's just one more reason to validate the fact that their son, who's got 4 years or 5 years to play for, is playing in a program where the head coach has got 5 years remaining on his current contract. So I think there's a lot of depth there of value and certainly depth of appreciation.
Anything else for Coach Rocco?
All right, guys, I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.